Hi, and welcome to this podcast, Laughter Lab. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to have you here, Tim. You are one of my inspiration. I love the work that you do. So thanks again for your time. So I know, all the things that you do, which I believe they're amazing. But I want you to share with the people out there that might not know. So can you briefly tell me a little bit about what you do?
Sure, sure. I talk about how we can use humor as a skill personally, professionally, that a lot of people kind of let it happen and they'll take it when it happens. And I think that we should be more intentional about it. When we do that, it helps with our resilience. It helps deal with stress. A lot of times it can take stress and actually turn it into a strength if you learn to look at it a little bit differently. I mostly do opening or closing keynotes at events. I do that a lot, and I've done them all over the world. I'm one of the few humorists, I guess, that does that because humor globally can be difficult with slang, uh, jokes that don't quite work because the language is different or the syntax is different. Takes a lot of time learning about it, but it's been really fun. In fact, as we were talking, I'm on my way to Singapore next week to speak there a couple times, and I'm really excited about doing that. But I try to give people the tools they can take back with them to work. Some of them are the stories and the ability to tell a well-told story. Some of them are the props that I use, like this is mental floss. This is you just kind of hook this on here and you can take the stress that's in there and floss it out. That old regulations. Either way, it's whatever somebody will actually use to deal with stress.
That's amazing. I mean, I love it. So, can you tell me like about humor, right? Like, was there like in your family when you were growing up, was there
Mhm.
somebody in your family or someone that you remember being very funny or usually there's an uncle, someone in the family
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
recall. Was
Um,
there anybody?
Mine was a little bit different. I grew up in a military family. My dad was in the Air Force, and we were stationed at little radar bases out in the middle of nowhere where they'd have housing areas of like 200 families, um, probably 30 miles away from town. I rode buses into town, and we moved every 2 years. So every 2 years, I had to make friends all over again, say goodbye, make new friends. And I think my older brother started playing music. That's how he connected. My younger brother was in theater, and I was president of everything I could be president of. That's how I made friends and started realizing that I had a way of seeing things differently that made people laugh, and that connected me. So growing up like that, it was encouraged by my family. My dad in the military had really dry sense of humor, very, very funny. My mom was very open to it, but I think that my parents were just really supportive, and I think that's probably where a lot of it came from.
That's good. So I would say we could say that humor always had a huge role in your life.
Yeah, and I think good humor, not, I really stay away from things that diminish people. We should always use it to enhance. And I
Mm.
think that's one of the family values that I was brought up with is that we don't put people down. It's why jokes don't work a lot for me because a lot of people tell jokes that make fun of people where I'm more of a funny story or a twist on something that happened or something like that, rather than a joke that makes fun of somebody, puts them down.
Yeah, I totally agree with you 100%. Yeah, it's more like bring people together than like push
Hmm.
them apart or like I don't
Yeah.
know. But what, in your opinion, how does humor and laughter impact like the work culture in a workplace?
I think a lot of it is a matter of timing. One of the rules I talk about in one of my classes is timing, intent, impact, and the parties involved. The timing, how and when it's used. I used to work for the welfare department and I was a welfare fraud investigator, and I wouldn't arrest people for fraud and go, I know you're upset, but watch this. I wouldn't do that. I mean, there's a timing for all of it, but we use it more to recover than anything else. Or when something negative happens, that we find a way of making it into more of a positive so that we don't just keep dragging it around with us like an old wagon. At one of my federal jobs, I got a new boss that told me that only thing you could have on your desk was 2 framed pictures. You couldn't, and I had little toys and stuff on my desk, little glitchy things you can only imagine. But they told me you could only have 2 framed pictures on your desk. And so I took a picture of all the toys on my desk, and that was one of my framed pictures that I had on my desk. And then the other one was just a frame without a picture in it. And I told him I just liked the frame. So I won the battle. I lost the war. I think it only made him madder. I mean, if I had to do it over, it was funny, but it didn't accomplish a positive thing. That's for sure. So I think I would have done it, but I would have done it more for myself than anything else.
I love that, the picture of the toys. I mean, that's genius. um so in your job, do you like have a like maybe been in a situation where like humor and laughter helped you like solve problems or solve like business or like companies
Yeah.
problems?
Yeah. I mean, I can actually, even on a huge scale, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I was on the USS Midway. That's an aircraft carrier that's in San Diego Harbor. If you're anybody on vacation, you can go, you can walk around. When we evacuated Vietnam, uh, everybody wanted to fly out on helicopters, and nobody wanted to fly back. And when the flight deck got full, we didn't know what to do because the helos were starting to ditch in the ocean, and we were worried people had died. One of the commanders said, "Why don't we push the helicopters over the side as a joke?" You know, it was like, and we got, and then he said, "We'll take the people off first." You know, so, but it's so wrong to push helicopters. We do everything to keep the helicopters. That's what we did. We emptied several helicopters and pushed them over the side and made room for more helicopters, which saved lives. So a joke ended up saving lives.
Wow.
Humor is combining ideas that don't normally associate together. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's ironic, sometimes it's irritating, I guess. But in this case, it was a fantastic idea that saved lives.
Mm, that's an amazing story. Wow, that's incredible. But do you feel like that sometimes maybe depending on the business or maybe in the corporate world that is like a maybe a misconcept or like a kind of a resistance to like incorporate humor and laughter? Do you feel like sometimes I get people to say, oh, we are a business, this is serious, there
Yeah,
is no time for laughter, we want people to work, not to laugh? Do you
that's
feel like
right.
there's a misconcept?
I think there's a big misconception. There is a time when humor isn't appropriate, totally inappropriate. And there is a time, I think, when it's really necessary. In our Zoom meetings, in the meetings that we have, it may be that we talk about the funniest thing that happened when we were on the road that week, that people can share their experiences, and that laughter makes people feel included rather than the other way around. If you're an attorney and you're trying a capital case, that's not the time to be using knock knock jokes with the jury. But I think what happens is that there's been times when people have used humor inappropriately, and that sticks so hard in people's minds that they get really scared to use it. um, Humor is about trust, it's about understanding. It's also hard with cultures. I did some training in Singapore several years ago where it's culturally not overly known that, about loss of face, about laughing at yourself. And they were really curious that they'd had Americans play practical jokes on them in different businesses, and they really were offended. And I had to explain to them that playing a practical joke on somebody is a form of acceptance for Americans and Canadians and British. And it's not making fun of you or putting you down. You don't have to do it, you just have to understand it. So culturally, it's really important that everybody be on the same line when we use it and how we use it. You just can't expect everybody to think the same way that you do about it. You have to give the rules of what's appropriate at work. When you and I are speaking at conferences, I don't care if it's 9 o'clock at night and we're in Las Vegas. If that group is a business group and all the employees have to be there, it's the same rules there that night as if they were at work during the day. And the humor has to be appropriate for being at work, the same as it's during the day.
Yeah.
When things go wrong around those, that's when people start saying, then we stop it. We don't want, we don't want that. And it's unfortunate because the creativity, people like their jobs more. I can prove all this. People learn best when they're in a state of moderate arousal. Humor causes that, and it's legal, so people,
Yes, I love it. And I think sometimes there is this, there is humor and there is laughter, right? I talk
mm,
about this thing, and yes, they do go together, but they're not the same thing, right? Because humor, as you mentioned, yeah, it changed from culture to culture. So something that is funny for me maybe is not for you, or something that is funny in one place is none of the other. But with laughter, it's kind of like it's a byproduct of humor, right? But
yes.
it's kind of like the universal language, right? We all, generally speaking, we
we
know how to
all we all laugh in the same language. We all smile and laugh in the same language. One of the most unique experiences I've ever had was for the $1 Million Roundtable. I had 6 or 8 thousand people in an audience, and I told a story, and it's interpreted in 10 different languages to the audience. And the English version landed, and the English people started laughing. And then the French version landed, they started laughing, and the Chinese over here are laughing. And suddenly people realize what's happening, and they all start laughing again. The meeting planner told me it was the laugh heard around the world.
Oh
Incredible
wow.
experience. We
Oh,
smile and laugh in the same language.
that's incredible. That wow, fantastic. I wish I was there.
Totally.
Yeah, what I was gonna say. Oh, I think maybe sometimes there is this thing about like I don't know, people at work maybe it's difficult for them to be themselves, right? Or to
Mhm.
like to show that laughter and humor because I don't know, because the world that we're living, there is a lot of pressure from the boss, the manager, the CEO,
Sure.
or society in general. Do you think like there's sometimes like people like don't allow themselves to do or to be a certain way because of fear?
Yes, a lot of it, I think a lot of it is fear. I worked for USDA Food Nutrition Service in Denver for a number of years. There was a person there that I never saw laugh once until the day I left.
Oh
And
wow.
I was sitting at my desk and I looked over and two of the custodians were bending over to pick up the same bucket and they both bonked their heads and fell back and he laughed. To him, that was the funniest thing he had ever seen. And although it wasn't probably the best appropriate thing to laugh about, it did my heart good to know that he could laugh after all of that.
Yeah.
But he just laughed and laughed and laughed. And, men and women have different things. There's all sorts of, I've heard some of the most amazing stories where somebody is having, I've been at places where they had debates about humor and they talk about the Three Stooges. And for some reason, men seem to like them more than the women seem to like them. And there were different types of humor. And the bottom line was that everybody has things they like or don't like, regardless of gender or age or whatever. But the thing is, it's including people, being inclusive so that we tell stories that people can understand. I watched a guy on stage a couple of years ago telling a story about how he was a uh, remote control. He was the remote controller for the TV that he would have to get up and turn the knob. And the group was a sales group, uh, young, 30s and under. None of them had any idea what a knob on a television was. Not one of them. It was like, well, why didn't they use a remote control? Why would anybody? Why would you? They just could not grasp it. You got to know your audience. You got to know the people you work
Mm.
with. Yeah.
Yes. So say I'm one of those manager or CEO or a person in charge, right? That would like to maybe bring more humor, more laughter, and more
Mhm.
playfulness in my workplace. Do you have any like advice on things that I could do?
I do. One of the things a lot of people do different team development, true team building. The team, I believe, has to be broken down and built up. Like what happened to me in the Navy or anybody in the Army or Marines, they break you down, they build you up. Team development's different. If you were to have folks take an improv class together, one of the first things they're going to learn is yes and that most answers are yes and, not no but. And I think that that's a huge thing in business today that would be a positive for almost any business.
Mm.
So, taking an improv class teaches people to think on their feet, helps them understand that it's okay to think on your feet. but it gives you little skills like that that can last a lifetime.
That's great advice. Yes, absolutely. I tell everybody, yeah, please go do improv because it's also about, you don't have to be great, right? You just have to just be
Just
yourself, and just
be.
play.
And there's no wrong answers. When there's
Mm,
something so freeing about knowing that
mm,
in that space where you're learning, there's no wrong answers.
mm.
It's yes and.
Absolutely. So if people want to know more about you and the amazing things that you do, where
Mhm.
can they find you?
So I'm just timgard.com, timgard.com. And I do primarily keynotes. I also have a safety program called Sticky Safety, where we use humor, story, and some unique humor in posters to help people be more safety conscious and remain more safety conscious. But it's just timgard.com, and tim at timgard.com gets me anywhere on the world.
Thank you so much, Tim. This has been fantastic. Thank you again for your time.
Really great to spend time with you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.